Hi everyone and welcome to This Is Why We Fight. I'm Jo.
And I'm Jordan.
Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Tyranny. It's a strange one this week and a little bit of a deviation from what we normally do, but this was so surprising and shocking and expected at the same time that we just had to cover this. So without further ado, let's show you what we're talking about. And it is this, which is the weirdest thing ever. So Brits to be sent SOS text alerts as warnings of terror attacks, fires and severe flooding. And this is not all that's on the list. What was that phrasing? Health emergencies was also included. So emergency alerts for terror attacks, floods and other disasters to be sent directly to phones. Brits will be sent SOS text alerts. I love how they've wasted so much time repeating the same thing over and over. Brits
Hey,
will
you
be
got to
sent.
get those 700 words in.
That's true. Maybe they take a pay cut if they don't cover their numbers. To warn of terror attacks, fires and severe flooding as part of a new government trial. The Cabinet Office revealed on Sunday that its new emergency alerts warning service will be trialled in East Suffolk on 25th of May. The new technology will see Brits receive an alert directly to the mobile phone if there is a risk to life, either locally or nationally. This could include a warning of public health emergency, a terror attack, industrial incident, fire or flood. Now they've listed a few there with a full stop. I'm sure there are more. The alert
I don't really see what risk of life there is if it's a national thing. Like if I'm living in, I don't know, like Bristol, for example, and there's an industrial fire up in Norwich, it's not really applicable to me. Like it's not good, obviously, but it doesn't apply. It's not threatening to me in any way, shape or form.
I don't know, maybe they just want you to know. Maybe the government feels that they withhold just too much information from us.
Maybe.
Anyway, I'll read the rest of it and then we can discuss, because this is weird. And the timing of it is incredibly weird. Again, just a reminder in case anyone had forgotten, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. But I'm so glad that we have time to worry about this. The alert text message, which will be free to receive, will also provide advice on how to best respond in the event of a serious emergency. Mobile operators will send out the information using the latest 4G and 5G technology. Interesting. The system will build on the use of messaging during the pandemic when Brits were told to stay at home. Similar alert services have been used in the US, Canada, South Korea and Japan, as well as New Zealand, where it has been credited with saving lives during earthquakes. If the East Suffolk trial is successful, the government will roll out the technology for the whole of the UK later this year. Cabinet Minister Penny Mordaunt said, "The emergency alert service will be a vital tool in helping us to better respond to emergencies, both nationally and locally. This new system builds on existing capability and will allow us to more quickly and effectively get life-saving messages to people across the UK." Again with the life-saving, that's interesting. Well, there you go. That's the whole story there on Yahoo. There are other publications covering this, but it's essentially the same message. So, I'm quite interested, actually, on this particular sentence. I didn't notice this before. Oh, for goodness sake, go away. I didn't notice this before. And we did say, didn't we, when we first looked at this, that it might be used as a tool to further engender fear during this global pandemic. And there it is in black and white. So I guess, as you said earlier, this is going to be a case of I was not informed will no longer count. In fact, I think wasn't one of the other stories we looked at. It went into a bit more detail about how this would work, and essentially, it's an alert service will go to your phone with an urgent type alert sound, and also vibrate.
He's going to be deliberately annoying. That's the general gist. I will try and find the other story for you.
And unignorable. So if you are told, because we don't have choices anymore, if you are told to leave an area, for instance, I don't know whether your phone needs to be switched on, and I'm not entirely sure how your phone can be accessed by the government. I don't know whether this is a standard, every number that's been applied in the UK will get this message, or whether this will be something to do with GPS, but I know that they said that they will be using masks to determine who is in the area, or in a particular area, rather. So
there's a lot of ways this can go kind of wrong. It isn't. My main concern here is it. As you said, they're obviously going to track you with this some way, somehow. It's not going to be totally difficult for them to do it. And it just kind of further builds upon that encroaching government control.
yes.
That all-seeing eye that knows exactly where you are at all times. What happens if they then say, okay, there's a variant outbreak in this area. You're now in lockdown. Just you in that area. You're now in lockdown. And then a day later, you go outside. You know, everyone, the coppers will know instantly that you've had the notification. They're going to be able to check it on your phone. So then what happens there? What's the repercussions with that?
Well, again, the excuse that you weren't aware will no longer hold. And
well, it's kind of like a personalised dictatorship.
It is. This is the eye of Sauron being fed directly into your ear, or into your eyes, whichever way you want to look at it. There is no way to avoid the compulsion to obey the rules once they can do this, once they can get you on your phone. If any more reason were needed to dump the smartphones.
Well, even dumping smartphones wouldn't work with this,
well, no.
Because it's going out over text.
Well, if you were going to replace it with a dumb phone, then yes, you still get it. I meant dump the smartphones. Just dump them. At this point in time, the only way for this to work, and I'm not entirely sure of this, I'm sure people in the chat will know, there has to be some kind of collusion between the governments and the phone providers, or the internet service providers. I don't know. This is creeping. This is more creeping tyranny. I hate this so much.
I kind of like the term personalised dictatorship.
This is a cult whispering in your ear. This is a cult that has direct access to you, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. And you will no longer have the defence of I didn't know.
You know what this is kind of like? This is a little bit like what they say about North Korea. They claim that in North Korea, all shops have to have the radio on, and at all times there is a message from the dear leader playing.
Well, this is essentially that, yes, because if I don't know how emergency broadcast networks work, but if your phone is off, can you still get the text alert?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
There's no information about that. I'm sure more will come once this trial has been completed. It's interesting, though, isn't it, that the more people protest against tyranny, the more tyranny we seem to get as a response.
Mm-hmm. And the excuses they're putting forward for this are pathetic. Floods. Who the hell needs to be told it's flooding? You can see. It's not as if like water just magically appears. It's not like an earthquake.
Exactly.
1 minute the earth is still, the next minute it's rocking and rolling all over the place. It's a flood, for goodness sake.
It doesn't bubble up from the ground. I mean, yes, it does bubble up from the ground. But if you were going to have flooding that you were unprepared for, it would be falling from the sky. There would be a clue.
Exactly. Even the flash floods that we have, they're not instantaneous. They're not like in some parts of the world where suddenly they do just get an almighty amount of water. We don't have that here.
No.
We have weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon weeks of rain, and then we flood.
Even if it was a burst pipe, there would still be warning. It would still be a gradual flooding.
Mm-hmm.
It still has to fill a street. It doesn't just magically appear in its completed state. So of course you would know. And if you were travelling to somewhere that's been flooded, presumably the people you're travelling to visit would let you know. And presumably you would check the weather. So that excuse doesn't fly with me. This is nanny statism on crack. You are not capable of making adult choices or taking adult responsibility, which is interesting after Boris's words about us living responsibly with COVID. Apparently, we're not responsible enough to do anything else.
Yeah, apparently we're responsible enough now to go without government edicts, but at all times they need to be able to have a direct line into us to make sure that we're safe, because they love us and they care so much.
It's genuinely like someone's planted something in your brain that you cannot switch off.
Am I right in saying that this also mentioned fires?
Oh, let's go back and have a look.
It was right at the top, I think.
Terror attacks, fires, severe flooding.
Yeah, like wildfires in this country. I know we have them. They're very rare. They're not.
Again, though, this is not something that's going to creep up on you. You would know that there was a fire.
Exactly. It's red and glowing. And it typically appears
smoke
in the same 3 places in the country. Like it's not that big of a deal.
And when things burn, can't you smell them?
Yes. Not. Apparently, we can do without government edicts, but we need to be informed on how to use our noses.
Well, maybe people who stuck swabs up their nose can't smell anymore. Maybe that's why this is necessary. I don't know. This is just very sinister.
The problem is with what you just said is it could be sarcasm. It could also be true.
Well, if you stick a swab far enough up your nose that it says hello to your brain, I think you've gone a bit too far. It's interesting, though, that they're sending out the information using the latest 4G and 5G technology. And by the way, that line there, mobile operators will send out the information.
I was just about to bring that up. I did notice that a minute ago. So mobile operators.
So this is not the government emergency broadcast.
No, this is
a collusion. Yeah, your phone company is colluding with the government to basically co-opt your phone anytime they like for any reason they deem worthy.
Also, a bit of a weird one. Using the latest 4G and 5G technology, this is going out over text, is it not? But do any of the other articles mention this? I'll just quickly look it up.
I just want to say there's a Stephen King movie called Cell. And basically, anyone who answers their phone at a particular time on this day, they go mental and they start attacking other people. They don't become zombies, they just become enraged. Like murderous, suicidal, violent. Mm-hmm. This is what this sounds like, honestly. Why do you need to send a text via 5G?
Yeah, they're saying this here. Unless I'm mistaken, I thought 4 and 5G technology was just internet usage. I'll read out the quote because you don't have it on screen. Under the emergency alert system, 4G and 5G mobile network operator technology will be used to send SMS text messages to all phones in the vicinity of the scene of an incident causing risk to life.
Well, you can send text via the internet because the iPhone, for instance, has an iMessage option. So it can be done. You can use Wi-Fi. You can use someone's Wi-Fi to send messages back and forth. Or actually, it's an enclosed network, but still. So you can do it. I know that you can. There are websites online that you can go to where you can go to a particular website and you can send a text message from this website to a phone. So I know it can be done using the internet.
This is another question as well. How exactly are you meant to trial a system like this? I suppose it would be, easy enough. They're just going to say, this is a trial emergency message. Please ignore it. I suppose maybe that's how I'm just reading a little too much into that.
Well, the trial would have to be announced, so you'd probably receive an initial text if you're part of this trial to inform you that the government will be sending various text messages through. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't even say whether or not this applies to... Well, it does actually, doesn't it? It does say it applies to everyone in a location. So they're also using signals bouncing off of cell towers to determine if you are in the locale of one of these emergencies that they're going to use on the emergency broadcast system. So that's tracking your location. The interesting thing would be is now that we know it's with the collusion of the mobile phone operators themselves, will you need to have your GPS switched on for this to work or not?
I don't think it's anything to do with the GPS as such. They're just going to be able to
bounce the signal.
It kind of bounce the signal, but I would imagine the way it's going to work is that they're just going to put out a blanket signal from one of the masts, and every phone in that area or every phone that comes into that area will automatically receive a text message.
So they're violating everyone's phones.
Pretty much.
And let's talk about who is behind this. Of course, the government. Let's talk about their track record with our information.
You mean like the good old days when they would leave information on the tube? Do you remember? I looked that up a couple of weeks ago. They did it like 4 times in a couple of months in the early 2000s.
That at least was some kind of incompetence. But this is worst case scenario. They're selling our information, and we know they are. Test and Trace have sold data. The NHS have sold data, or they've been hacked. The way they protect our data is the way they protect our health. In the middle of the biggest global pandemic history has ever seen, or modern history has ever seen, they've told everyone to stay indoors, not get any fresh air. They've not given any advice on diet or exercise, except to restrict it. The same people that have abused their position numerous times. And we trust them with this. What kind of uses do you think? Now, they've listed a few. What other uses do you think they could use this for?
The main one to me, the main initial worry is they're obviously going to use this to put areas into local lockdowns. Because that was something they were always struggling with. They couldn't quite work out how to do it. And they were saying, we're going to lock down this city and this town.
Okay, but what
Obviously,
if you're just visiting and you get the message?
Well, that's what I was going to say. This here is a much more granular way to do it. Because now they're going to say this area, and it's going to be defined by the telegraph poles, or the Form 5G networks, rather. Anyone entering this, you're automatically going to have to obey the lockdown laws for this area. And they're going to be like, okay, you're not allowed out. This is under extreme lockdown. This is lockdown level 5 or whatever it went up to.
Okay, let's break down their excuses then. On a grand scale, would you say this country has an epidemic of flooding, fires, industrial incidents?
Flooding, I would kind of maybe not agree with as such, but we definitely do flood.
All right,
but that's kind of that's
sudden,
every nation.
Sudden surprise flooding? Probably should have used that as a precursor. Right, so sudden surprise flooding, sudden surprise fires, sudden surprise industrial incidents. They could happen, but not on a national scale. That's nonsense. Sudden surprise terror attacks, well, aren't they all? But not nationwide.
To be fair, the IRA did give us warnings.
Well, that's more than some have done. I wonder, is the government expecting a terror attack or two coming up?
It's kind of interesting this has coincided with the Indian variant, and it's also really interesting that this hasn't been in the news at all. I've seen nothing about this, and suddenly it's here, it's done. Normally they like to say, oh, we're planning this system, and then they roll the system out, and oh, look, it's a success, aren't we smart?
Yes.
This here...
They've set this up already. It's ready to go to trial. They've been working on this for some time. It's interesting also that the excuses to me sound rather lame, and I'm sorry, they just do. Public health emergency. This potentially are your future outbreaks, everyone, because this is never going to end. Never.
From now on, realistically, we're going to get news about outbreaks in our area from our phone. Even if you want to ignore the news and all of that, you're not going to be able to. That stress, because a lot of people are not paying any attention to the news whatsoever. I have a couple of friends like that, just not paying attention to the news. If they're suddenly getting messages every couple of days saying, you're now in lockdown, and then a few days later you're now not in lockdown, they're going to start getting a little anxious every time they get a text message, thinking, oh, am I in lockdown? Am I not in lockdown? Am I allowed to go outside today?
And let's
It's going
not
to start
forget,
playing on people's minds.
the government have already stated in at least one of the documents we covered during the Mindspace series, people aren't afraid enough. They just aren't. This is the 24-hour fear mongering that we used to get on the mainstream media, on the television and the radio, and on your websites. You can switch that off. You can walk away from that. This is going to come to your phone. There is no hiding from it. This is going to ramp up anxiety to such a level no one will be able to switch off from it or have a break from it.
The irony is, this is kind of like putting the BBC app, the BBC News app, onto everybody's phone.
And preventing them from removing it.
Yeah, because there'd be no way to opt out of this system. You won't be able to do it.
This will be another one of those default opt-ins.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure, had the government bothered to have a consultation with the people and ask them if they wanted this, I think an overwhelming majority would have said no, tar. But this is happening whether you like it or not. And it doesn't matter what kind of phone you have. If it can receive a text, it will receive their text. This means, given this kind of blind consumerism we've engaged in for the last couple of decades, this means your children are going to receive these texts. And your grandparents, who you've probably convinced to get a phone so you can keep in regular contact, especially those that have been trapped inside their care homes over the last year, who've finally got a taste of freedom. Nobody can escape this. This will be constant fear, constant anxiety.
I just thought of another use case for this. They kind of mentioned it a little bit in one of the other articles where they said about this has already kind of been done with the NHS messages. I can't exactly remember what it said, but basically it was based upon something that they'd already been doing by sending out text messages telling people to stay home and protect the NHS and all of that jazz. You know, the beans, Heinz thing.
Yeah, I had loads of those.
This, I actually didn't, oddly enough, but that's a slightly different topic. This will also be used to inform people of the death rates in their local area.
Oh, brilliant. Ramping up the fear again.
Could you imagine how that is an effective text message? If they start saying, you know, you've been to, I don't know, Brighton today, wherever, you've been to North Brighton today, and in the past 48 hours, X number of people from North Brighton have died. Stay home, protect the NHS. That's going to be something they start sending out. And once again, that raises the stress levels of your average person, especially the people who are not paying attention to the news, the people who've deliberately chosen to cut it out.
There's a really good rule of war as well, and it's simply to remember this. If what they wanted was happening, the propaganda would be unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't doing what they want. People are still making choices for themselves, for their families.
I think that's plainly obvious.
This is such a ramping up of control as to be unheard of. I don't care that other countries have this. You're welcome to it. I don't want this. I know millions of other people won't want this. And none of us will have the choice to decline. None of us. So how's that freedom and liberty working out for everyone?
I also love how they've put up other nations as examples. Like, the nations who are doing this, I don't know, the US, in places like California and Florida, where they have earthquakes and hurricanes and massive, massive forest fires.
Only
Japan,
recently.
Yeah, well, you know, Japan, where they have tsunamis. New Zealand, where they have tsunamis and earthquakes. Like, okay, there's an argument to be made that maybe in these nations something like this makes sense. In this country, it just doesn't. We don't have those sort of disasters. We're one of the few places in the world that doesn't have anything like that. The worst thing we get is flooding because it's rained for 6 months solid. That's what we get. But you don't need a bloody text message on your phone to tell you it's flooding. You can see it. It's wet. There's lots of puddles out.
The thing is, the government doesn't need an excuse to engage in this. They really don't. But they know that people will say no. And the reality is, you don't have the right to reject this or decline it. You cannot physically decline it. I suspect turning your phone off will not stop it. We'll find out. But even if you did, the moment you switch it on, it will be sat there and the alert will go off. I'm more interested in the fact that governments have proven they can't be trusted, that they tell you what they want you to hear, they withhold a lot of information or just outright lie. The question is, as they never waste a crisis, and they don't do anything by accident, what is the purpose of this, the real purpose? They've masked this as some kind of public service. What's the payoff? Apart from the fear-mongering and the constant anxiety, is there some kind of data exchange when this happens?
In my opinion, the purpose here is this fulfills the salience part of mind space.
Making the messages personal. It's sent directly to you.
Exactly. This is vastly different to just a general notification you're getting on your phone from BBC News or Fox News or whatever news.
Actually,
this is a direct message straight to you, and without a doubt, they're going to start personalising it as well. They're going to start putting your name into it. So they're going to get your phone number. They're going to look up your phone contract, and they're going to say, "Hi, Bob. There's an emergency in your area. Stay at home." Or please leave. That'll be the other thing that they haven't actually mentioned. Will this be used for things like car crashes and traffic? You know, the M1 is blocked today because of an accident that happened at this junction and that junction. Please don't go there. That sort of thing.
Hi, Bob. It's a nice family you've got. It'd be a shame if something happened to them. I was just going to say, I did read an article actually, and they were talking about the fact that one of the weaknesses of the mind space, or all of this kind of change agent manipulation and propaganda they go through, is they can't personalise the messages enough. And I think this has come directly from the back of that kind of discussion that they've had. Personalising a message makes people feel a sense of responsibility. This is manipulation 101. Again, if they can personalise this message, and you're right, they will, because all of my messages about stay at home, lockdowns, updates, they've all had my name on them. Every single one.
Because you pay more attention. And as you said, you feel responsible for it, which plays into everything else they're doing. The propaganda is now, you need to do this to protect other people.
Yeah,
it's putting the onus on you to be a good person.
Have to be a good citizen and do as you're told. I will say, it hasn't worked on me, but that's me, and I know it won't work on many, but it will work on the majority. Because when people feel a sense of obligation, they're easier to guilt trip, and that's what this will be.
Yeah, this is the government guilt trip system. That's what this should be called. That's what this episode should be called, actually.
Consider it done.
Thank you very much. It's rare for me to come up with a subject title.
But just remember this, your mobile operator is deeply involved in this. And there'll probably be something in the media over the next few days saying, "Oh, we were forced to do it. We don't like that the government's forcing us to do it." Like hell. Come on. This is your freedom going up in flames. That's when you need an emergency alert for a nationwide fire. It's burning. Everything is burning. Everything you took for granted that you would have for your lifetime and your children's lifetime, it's all going up in flames. And this so-called conservative government, which is conserving nothing, is on some kind of power trip, the likes of which we've never seen before. And there is a nasty habit when governments change, because the civil service never does, as we've mentioned many times. They never repeal legislation.
It'd be really interesting to go through the books and find out what laws have been repealed and then just repealed. That's it.
I bet that would be a short stream.
I bet that would be bloody tiny.
I know the Conservatives haven't repealed anything that Labour brought in since Blair. I don't know. I've not looked back further than that. Or not anything sort of from a cultural perspective that affects how we are perceived or what we can do in public. The reality is, if there are any conditions on your behaviour in public, you are not free. And I'm not talking about the right to murder, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, social things.
Social
Normal,
things.
bloody healthy societal changes.
Yeah. Healthy interaction should be completely free from any rule. And it's not. And you are not free. And this is something everyone needs to understand. We are not free. We are not free to refuse this emergency broadcast. We are not free to reject it from our phones. We are not free to find a mobile operator that doesn't engage with it, because it says mobile operators, plural. It doesn't list any specific ones, which means all of them. For it to work on a local or nationwide, what's the word I'm thinking of? Situation. No, that's not the right word. But anyway, for it to work...
situation is incident.
For it to work on that kind of scale, that was the word I was looking for, every single mobile operator must be involved in this. So whether you've got a contract phone or a SIM-only deal or pay-as-you-go or whatever, it doesn't matter. Your mobile operator is engaged with this. And that's incredibly scary. And your children are going to get these messages. And
it makes...
Go on.
Sorry. I was just going to say, it makes meeting up with people in person, like local meets, much, much more important, I think.
It does, but this is the upgraded version of track and trace.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they can find your phone is local to an area for one of these alerts, they can find that your phone is local to an area for any reason. They're the government. And once your mobile operator has basically sold out and given them access to this information, which they clearly already have for the trial to take place, it's unreasonable to assume that all the people in East Suffolk are all using one mobile operator. Mm-hmm. Then your information, again, is up for grabs, just like your freedom is up for grabs.
I just kind of thought of something. I've actually thought out a bit more in my head. The reason that I say it's more, this sort of thing makes community much more important is because that's when you start talking to people. And eventually you're going to run across somebody who is at one of these so-called incidences. And then you might find out some things. That maybe what they're claiming isn't what actually was. I kind of said it earlier on. Are they going to start using this for things like accidents? Because that would be a really good way to start funneling traffic around. Or start making it more inconvenient for people to drive.
Well, they definitely want people to stop driving, don't they?
Exactly. They're desperate to get people to stop driving. Could this be used in that sort of way? Could this be used to send out text messages such stating that the M1 is blocked between this junction and that junction? And then people think, oh, it's been blocked every day this week. I'm not bothering. I'm going to take the train instead. And then if you're not out in your local community, you can't find out what's going on. You have no idea if there's actually an accident there. You have no idea you could run into, but somebody you meet could be a lorry driver who was at the front of the crash. And it could turn out that the thing that shut the motorway down was nothing at all. It was just a small bump and a car on the hard shoulder.
Or traffic could be diverted somewhere for some reason.
Exactly. I have a real thing against the smart motorways. I've had a real thing against the smart motorways for years. It's slightly conspiratorial. I am 110% convinced they're using the smart motorways as some sort of psyop. Because the amount of times you go down the smart motorway and it says it starts going from 70 down to 60, down to 50, down to 40, and then it claims there's a car crash, and so on and so forth. It just doesn't make sense. the amount of times it happens, it is not normal. You don't get it on any other sort of motorway, yet on these smart motorways, magically, they're constantly controlling traffic, constantly slowing you down, inconveniencing you.
No, of course it's not
And
normal.
then,
It's the new normal.
and then, 1 minute, and then there's nothing there. That's the thing. The amount of times you'll go through this, you'll be slowed down for miles, and then there's nothing. I'm sure they do it on purpose to try and see how many people ignore the warnings.
They don't mention, by the way, what the punishment would be if you ignored one of these alerts or one of these instructions.
Indeed. That's an interesting aspect, and that's something that we're not going to find out until afterwards.
So
Once again.
I was going to say, if anyone in the chat knows someone living in East Suffolk who takes part in this trial, do please let us know and let us know what they found out, because that would be very interesting to find out. We will keep an eye on this story and provide any updates as and when we find them. So, same message as always. If you do not protect your freedoms, you will lose them. Please be safe. We'll be back tomorrow live. Have a very good evening, everyone, and take care.